Shalom Mishkan David, partners with Israel, and welcome to our weekly updates. You're about to watch this week's update, what's happening in Israel, what's happening in the spirit, so you'll be educated and you'll know how to wage war against the enemies and how to pray and what to pray about. So if you're not yet a partner with Israel, please go into our mishkandavid.org website, scroll down a little bit, you'll see Give to Israel. Just click on that link over there and become a sustainable partner of Israel. With $18 a month or increments of $18, you can make a huge impact in Israel, help people, support lives, and really make a difference. So please go to mishkandavid.org, click on the Israel link, and become a sustainable partner. Now, go to the video.
Shalom Mishkanites, Shalom Israel partners, and welcome to the mountains of Jerusalem. Unfortunately, I'm standing here on a soil that has been burnt by Arab terrorists, arsenic that has been burning the forests of Jerusalem. Behind me, some of the burnt trees around the mountains of Jerusalem. And there's a reason why I'm standing here, and I'm going to give it to you right now in this report. But before we're going to go straight to the report, I want to speak about the Torah portion of this week. And by the way, I've been getting a lot of messages from people that follows us. They are very happy about our reports because they say that we are the only channel they're seeing that finds a beautiful way to connect the dots between what's happening now currently in Israel and around Israel to the ancient times of the Bible, and we know how to tie together with the Torah portion and what's currently happening in Israel. So let's start quickly with the Torah portion of this week, Beshalach, which means to send away. This is the time when eventually Pharaoh, after being struck by God by the 10 plagues, he's sending away the people of Israel to the desert, so-called to worship God. But both of us, we know that this was the journey towards the promised land. And as the people of Israel start going towards the promised land, Pharaoh again regrets his decision and comes to chase them and try to stop them and bring them back to Egypt. Unfortunately for him, the Lord God of Israel has other plans, and together with Moses, as the people of Israel are standing in front of the Red Sea, Moses takes his staff, splits the water into two, and the people of Israel cross on the dry land with a wall of water to the right and a wall of water to the left. And once they finish crossing the Red Sea, Pharaoh and his army run straight inside. And unfortunately for them, the Lord God of Israel gives Moses the power to return the waters over the Egyptians, and Pharaoh and his army, all of them are drowning inside these waters, showing you what happens to the people who are trying to prevent God to bring his people home. And that's not enough. As they continued their journey in the desert, and by the way, they could have chosen the shortest way through the coastline, through the Philistines, but God gave them another way. He doesn't want them to engage with the Philistines right away because he doesn't want the people of Israel to face war just as they're entering into the promised land, so they won't be discouraged. But the Amalekites, those enemies of Israel, are coming and running towards to meet the Israelites on their way and starting a fight against the Israelites. We know that Moses holds his hand up, and Aaron and Hur are holding and helping him, and the people of Israel strikes down the Amalekites. And from that moment on, we get this command by God to destroy and erase the Amalekites from the face of the earth. Unfortunately, we failed to do that. And hopefully in the future we will be able to do this, because every generation has their Amalekites, either the Persians with Haman, or the Persians, the Iranians nowadays, or Hitler's and his proxies. Every generation has people that wants to prevent Israel from walking into their promise and settling down in calmness and security in the promised land. We're seeing these Amalekites now in the face of the Palestinians, not only the Iranians and the proxies that are coming against Israel. There are Palestinians within the land of Israel, and even Israeli Arabs that calls themselves Palestinians, and they are from within even the government of Israel. They're trying to hinder and to stop us from settling down in security in our land. And to connect what happened during the times of the Bible, when we were reading in Exodus 13 through 17, the beginning of the journey of the people of Israel towards the promised land, we're seeing this right now currently with the bad, illegitimate, not very legitimate government of Israel. And we spoke about them so many times before, that a government that is actually trusting Arabs, members of Knesset, that calls themselves and define themselves even Palestinians as part of their government, like Mansour Abbas and Ahmad Tibi, and Arabs that are part of the Arabs within Israeli parliament that are always against us. Now they started a new deal to support the illegal settlements of Bedouins that are supported by Islamic Brotherhood on the lands and the soils that belongs to the people of Israel in the Negev. And how do we see that right now with the riots that takes place throughout the Negev right now? Arabs, Bedouins, locals, supported by those Arab members of Knesset, those politicians, Mansour Abbas, Ahmad Tibi, and all the rest of them are coming to support the local illegal Arabs that settles on the lands that belongs to the people of Israel, to the JNF, to the Jewish National Fund. And even recently, the government of Israel authorized electricity to be given to this illegal Arab settlement, trying to arrange things with the supporters of the government, with the Arab Muslim supporters of the government, surrendering to their will. And this is not enough. And we see what happens. The more you give to the enemy, the more greedy they get. And now they are coming against the Israeli police. They're throwing stones at the police officers. They're trying to stop the JNF to do what we do every year towards Tu B'Shvat, to plant trees in the land and the soil that belongs to the people of Israel from generations. Even before the State of Israel was established, the Jewish National Fund purchased these lands from the Turkish Empire, from the Ottomans, and the local Arabs don't want to let us plant trees on our soil, on our land that belongs to us. They're supported by their local politicians who tells them that the more they're going to resent, the more Israel is going to fold back. And we're facing a huge crisis in this very shaky coalition. And we knew that from the beginning. Our ministers, like Lieberman, for example, who comes from the right wing, always was against the way of the Arabs to take over the land. He surrendered and even authorized and voted for them to get electricity into their illegal settlements. And yet they are coming against us full power. We know that this government should not finish its terms. We know that a government that has a leader, Bennett, that is only there by the force of only 6 members of Knesset that voted for him, and by surrendering to the Arabs, these people that took and stole votes from the right wing, Lieberman and Bennett, and giving them to the left wing and to the Arabs, they have no legal claim over the land of Israel, over the government in Israel of Israel. And now we see what happens with the Arab politicians. They're showing their cold shoulder to this government right now, and they're doing their best to prevent us from entering into our land. This terror, the way that one side they're burning our forest, on the other hand they're not letting us plant trees. We can see here, for example, the Likud member Avi Dichter, who was the Minister of National Security, wants to also plant trees on the soil of Israel to show where the real heart is. These Arabs are not letting us do that. They burn everything like we see around me right now, where I'm standing right now, as a terrible memorial for their efforts to try and kick us out of the land. But not here. Us, together with you, Mishkan David, the lovers of Israel, we're going to stand firm and pray to God and say, please defeat our enemies and let us hold our land and live here in security. And as I'm wrapping it up right now, I want to say thank you on behalf of my family and the State of Israel, and on behalf of the Golani Brigade, for your amazing, generous donation. Let's go straight to the soldiers that thank you for your gift. I love you a lot. Shabbat Shalom. Let's go.
Thank you, Mishkan David, for your generous donation. It's a great help for all of us here at Golani. We love you and Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.